Hello everyone, and welcome to the Biblical Bookworm. My name is Elizabeth, and today I'll be talking about the book Miracles by C.S. Lewis. It was published in 1947, and it explores the philosophical and historical aspects of miracles. Lewis argues for the possibility of miracles and criticizes the dismissal of miracles by modern historians based on cultural bias. He presents the idea that miracles, although they are beyond natural law, are not incompatible with nature, with which he is supporting the existence of a supernatural world and a benevolent creator who may intervene in reality after creation. C.S. Lewis defines miracle to mean an interference with nature by a supernatural power. So he explicitly says that miracles are not just statistical anomalies. I'll summarize some of the thoughts presented in the book now. At this point, I'd like to warn you that the book is very hard to understand, so if what I will now summarize in this video sounds complicated, please note that I chose to summarize the parts of the book that were easiest to understand, and I try to explain them as simply as possible. I'll talk more about the fact that the book is hard to understand when we get to my opinion on the book at the end of the video. But before we move on, I'd like to say that I know that 73% of you are not subscribed yet, so please consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't yet. Before discussing miracles, it's crucial to determine if they can exist. There are two possibilities, as C.S. Lewis explains. Either they exist or they do not. If miracles do exist, their likelihood must be considered. The reasoning process then delves into our beliefs about miracles. If we don't believe in miracles, even when faced with something seemingly miraculous, we will try to rationalize it. And similarly, if we perceive miracles as possible but improbable, we will still attempt to explain them away. Because of that, historical evidence alone can't prove the existence of miracles because it relies on the observation of individuals with their own beliefs and assumptions. From this, C.S. Lewis concludes that it's necessary to address the initial philosophical question in order to answer the question if miracles are possible. One of the things he touches upon in the book is the common argument that in earlier days people only believed in miracles because they didn't know how things actually worked. So they didn't know the natural explanation. A common example would be that people only believed in the virgin birth because they didn't know how babies are made. C.S. Lewis refutes this by explaining that when Joseph found out that Mary was pregnant, he wanted to leave her at first, because he knew very well how women get pregnant. So when he accepted to believe in this miracle, he did so while being fully aware of the fact that a virgin birth is contrary to nature. Then C.S. Lewis also presents the argument that if all our thoughts are merely the result of physical causes, as natural imposits, then there is no basis for assuming that they are also grounded in reason. Since knowledge is obtained through reasoned grounds, if naturalism were true, we would have no way of knowing it or anything else not directly caused by the physical world. Lewis argues that this renders statements like "I have reason to believe naturalism is valid" self-referentially incoherent because it's a contradictory statement. He cites Haldane's similar reasoning, who said that if our thoughts are solely determined by atomic motions in the brain, we have no reason to trust the truth of our beliefs. Another chapter is devoted to the phenomenon of morality. The main idea here is that moral arguments are the result of reasoning and not merely influenced by society. Some argue that morals are a product of societal conditioning, but statements like ought, this is good, this is evil, reflect values rather than personal preferences. If these moral ideas can be fully explained by non-moral, irrational causes, then they're illusory. Quote, "A moment after they have admitted that good and evil are illusions, you will find them exhorting us to work for posterity, to educate, revolutionize, liquidate, live, and die for the good of the human race." The naturalist's philosophy does not align with their actual way of living. C.S. Lewis argues that to continue making moral judgments, it's necessary to believe that human conscience is not solely a product of nature. Finally, he also touches upon the usefulness of analogies. C.S. Lewis argues that to understand the supernatural God, we rely on analogy, which helps us grasp things that are hard to comprehend. Analogies are not perfect, but they still give us valuable insights. Imperfect analogies don't invalidate the results we derive from them. They may not capture everything accurately, but they still offer useful information. We can establish 3 principles to support the importance of analogy. First, our thoughts are separate from the accompanying imagination. This means our thinking can be valid even if the mental images are not entirely accurate. Second, false imagery doesn't make our thoughts incorrect. We can still have logical and coherent thinking despite imperfect mental representations. Lastly, when discussing things we can't see, touch, or hear, like the supernatural, we inevitably use analogies that draw on our senses. We describe the unseen using what we can perceive, making analogies essential for explaining these concepts. Therefore, we must embrace analogy to explain the supernatural rather than dismissing it. Analogies help us shed light on the mysterious aspects of the supernatural and understand it better. Now, when it comes to my opinion on the book, I have to say I don't recommend it because it's hardly possible to understand it. As you might know, I'm a huge fan of C.S. Lewis, and for example, Mere Christianity is my favorite book. But Miracles by C.S. Lewis is completely different, and I think you probably also realized that while watching this video. The thing here is that I hardly remember anything from the book because the reasoning wasn't clear for me, and it was very hard to make this summary with a book that is so difficult to understand and to follow. If you read the book, feel free to share your experience in the comments because maybe some of you liked the book. So for me personally, I will remain without a rating, but as you can see, I wasn't a fan of the book. That's been it for today. I hope you liked the video. See you next week. God bless and bye!